Hi, welcome back to our channel if you watched last week, and if you didn't, hello. This is our second video ever about our farm here in Galicia. So just to give you a little bit of background about us, we have lived in the Costa Blanca, and then we decided that it was a little bit too hot for us there and it wasn't fulfilling the vision that we had around moving to Spain, which was to become as sustainable as possible and learning to farm and live creatively small. So we moved to Galicia after a quick visit here. It's been a pretty rocky journey with disasters over the last year, making us wonder if we can really do this. But all in all, if you are interested in any of our topics around this project and journey, I hope you will enjoy this content and the videos we put out here. But today we thought we would talk about the weather, because it seemed to be a big question on Facebook forums around what it's really like here with the weather. And before we moved here, I looked at a lot of those forums and I didn't really get a real feel for how wet it is here, or if it is wetter than the UK, especially when some people were saying that it does rain more here than in London. However, we're going to give you a realistic idea of what the weather is like here and keep you up to date with what we're doing and our basic experience with buying a property that we couldn't live in. So going back to that, we did buy a farmhouse in Galicia only to find out we couldn't live in that house. And it's not an easy topic for us to talk about, but it does relate to the weather here. Generally speaking, when you look at properties here, you'll look at them in the good months, because that's when estate agents will encourage you, especially those that market themselves to expats. They'll encourage you to come in the summer and look at properties, and that's basically because they look better in the summer, and also family will be visiting Galicia in the summer and they'll have the keys to allow you to visit. But our recommendation is that you look at a property in the summer and in the rainy months just to see what happens, because there's a lot of surface water when it does rain here, and that surface water has to go somewhere. So firstly, does it rain a lot? Well, yes, it does rain a lot when it rains. It comes down quite heavy and the water table is quite high in many places of Galicia. So depending on where you are and how hilly, mountainous and flat it is, that rainwater goes somewhere. So if you're looking at property, you might want to consider where water's going to travel from your land, and if water is traveling into your land and your property. We live south of Lugo in Galicia, and we're in farmland, so it's hilly but not mountainous, which means that water flow is always moving in these months. I believe that the coast in Galicia is a lot wetter. I do follow weather reports and rain collection reports. You can go to a site called Meteorologic and see past weather there. There are weather stations that collect rainfall, and if you actually look at the coast, more rainfall does actually fall on coastal areas and across the north of the coast. However, saying that, it is milder there and a lot warmer, and the summers are really beautiful. So if you can get through the winters and the rainy months, which tend to be November and from sort of February to March time, you don't mind that wet season, then it's a fantastic place to live. I will say that where we are, we get drier weather and it's more changeable. So we had a rainy day yesterday, and then today we can see that the sun is coming out, and you do find that surface water does move and it dries out very quickly. But that takes me on to another topic, which is humidity. So it is a very humid climate in Galicia, and that's just part and parcel of living here. And obviously you notice that when you're looking at houses, because they have damp spots and often mold, and the longer they're left, very quickly that mold grows and appears on furniture, around windows. If there's like bedding and mattresses, you'll see that there can be mold. So you just have to take that into account living here. And how we handle that is by having 2 humidifiers running, especially on damp days. And we always have the dehumidifier on if we've just had a shower. So we're constantly drying out the house. A lot of houses here are stone built, so they can feel quite cold upstairs in the colder months. The temperatures do vary, and temperatures can drop overnight. I think we might be dropping to -2 this week. So they will feel cold, and those cold spots can cause condensation, and you'll get used to seeing condensation on your windows. If you're renovating a house here, you have to allow for dry out time. You have to be prepared to have quite a damp house, particularly if you've been plastering. And sometimes some of these newer windows can seal in the damp. Looking at a house that hasn't been lived in for a while, you know that those trenches and runaways aren't really going to be there. And you might want to look at your neighbours and what they're doing and see if what they're doing affects your property, because it's a big thing. You've got to move the water away from your property and keep your property dry. In the summer months, it's hard to open up your windows when there's a lot of bugs around, because this is a very wet, mulchy and warm environment. So we always say, to people as well, if they're asking questions on Facebook, just put nets on the window if you want to open your windows, but prepared. If you don't, be prepared to have some bugs flying around. So there's lots of things that come with living somewhere where it does rain, but on the top of that, aside from that, the benefits are it's a fantastic place to farm and grow crops. So for us, when the rain comes, it tends to be quite heavy. There's not a lot of wind here, so it just falls gently. We really enjoy that rain because we're from Cornwall, and in Cornwall it's very gusty and windy, and we lived in a coastal area. So as well as the rain, it was coming with high gusts of wind. So it was pretty treacherous and difficult to just go out for a walk in it. But you will see that there are a lot of pilgrims and Camino walkers throughout the year, walking rain or shine, because I don't think that the rain here is as dramatic as what you would see in the UK and maybe other parts of Northern Europe. In the summer, all of those trenches and runaways are dry, and it's hard to believe that they're going to fill up in the winter. But I can reassure you that at the moment, when we go out for walking, we have one particular rescued galgo. He's very curious about water, and he gets hot ears when he's excited, and he will constantly jump into these kind of runaway streams that are running. And don't be surprised if you have land, which we found is you might get some really boggy, wet areas within that field. So if you are keeping livestock and animals, you just need to be aware of that. One thing that occurred in the field behind our house is a pond. It's just come up from an underground water source, where it's just pushed its way to the surface. And yes, our Galgo Brave fell into it the other day. He was curious about it, underestimated how deep it was, and he basically just plunged into it head first and came out soaked, which was, I didn't capture it on camera, just afterwards. I wish I did, but he just took it, luckily, in all good jest. I think if it was one of our other dogs, it would have been a different matter. There would have been like more trauma on top of the trauma we already have, because they are rescues. I'm going to talk about our experience now buying a house. I'm going to cover it as quickly as possible. But we fell in love with a property in the summer months, and we were, I would say, slightly coerced into buying that property, and really sold it by an agent that specifically targets outsiders from Galicia, people who might be a little bit naive to the reality and may not have been in Galicia for long enough to know the reality of rainfall and what happens when there's rainfall. So when we were looking at a property, we fell in love with a property. It showed no signs of flood damage at all, and that was something we were looking at because there was a small stream, river, next to the house, which we were really excited about. There are lots of properties around our property and they were lived in, so that was a good sign for us. We didn't really know to be cautious of flooding, but obviously we know that it rains here, so we were like looking at the land, and it just showed no signs of previous floods. However, It hadn't been lived in for a very long time. So if you are looking at property and it hasn't been lived in for a while and it's been marketed for a while, you want to ask yourself, you know, why aren't locals interested in this property? Why are they not buying it? Because they do tend to snap up bits of land around their land. But we were reassured that our house that we were looking at was dry and livable, and we had many checks, spoke with different professionals, but now in hindsight we know those professionals weren't impartial. They were connected to the agent with the agenda of selling that property really quickly through the summer months, which didn't allow us to see the true risks associated with that property. So when we bought the property, we started preparing it to move in. We're really excited. But within 2 weeks, there was a hurricane across the Atlantic, which brought a lot of rain to Galicia. And we woke up one morning, took our daughter to school. And when we got back, we found that our house was completely inundated with water. It was completely flooded. And I'm going to put pictures up about that so you can have a look at it. So initially we were like, oh, this is like a unique situation because of the hurricane. And I started doing my research because I used to be an analyst. And so I approach everything from an analytical mentality. Sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes that was a bad thing. But I think in this case, it was a great thing because I looked at it and I found this great site that shows you waterfall across the months of past years. And I looked at the rainfall and I said to Troy, you know what, this rainfall, yes, it was a lot in a short period of time, but this can happen here. It's not exceptional. It wasn't an exceptional amount of water that fell over these 3 days. I think this house has flooded before. So once we had that sort of mindset, we started looking at the property. We got our water tested and we found a local neighbour, had a good chat with him. And he was a neighbour that we'd sort of been a little bit poisoned against by neighbours that were connected to the sellers. And they had told us, oh, don't talk to this neighbour. He might do this and he might do that. And he might be a problem for you. I'm not going to go into those details because it is a bit of a legal situation. But luckily for us, we had sort of decided to make our own judgment around anyone and not be influenced by anyone as newbies coming in. And we had got to know him and we started chatting to him. And I, said to him, is this a unique situation or have you seen this before? And he said, this can happen throughout the year. And then the moment that he said that, it was a real game changer for us. We started to look at our situation a little bit differently. And I said to Troy, I think we should get a lawyer that's completely outside of this, a completely impartial lawyer, and just hear from them and maybe speak to people that are not connected to this property in any way. Now, I know now I'm telling you this story, I feel kind of embarrassed by how naively we approached buying a property. But I have to tell you that we had come from the south and we had bought a property there and gone through all the similar processes and experiences with an agent that was specialized in outsiders and spoke English. And they were really above board and really trustworthy. On top of that, we'd had no problems and we'd never heard of any problems. And when we came here, we saw a lot of success stories and great stories. And we allowed that to influence our judgment because there are always, with any agent, there are happy ending stories. But unfortunately, at times, even the agent can be misled by sellers. So we don't really know the story here with the agent. We don't know, if he was completely an honest person with this, but we will say that we do feel pretty skeptical now when it comes to property. And we did look at other properties afterwards and we used a number of agents that specifically focus on outsiders and expats that are new to the area. Marketing spiel, seemed over familiar to us, and our skepticism said, we're not doing this again. And we just looked at the whole thing and the approach to it completely differently. And when we said things like we want to get a lawyer, an outsider, what I would say to anybody looking at property, wherever you are in the world, if somebody tries to influence your approach to buying a property and it's not within your comfort zone, step away immediately and get somebody else to work on your behalf, because when you are emotionally invested in a dream or a opportunity or a vision, you sometimes back down some of the flames around your intuition or your feelings of that doesn't sit well with me, because you've got this vision and dream. And we've spoken to lots of people afterwards, and it happens, when you come to Spain and you begin to realize a vision and a potential dream, and you see the opportunities here and you see other people have done it, you just think, oh, well, this is part and parcel of the process. This is what you do, and you don't want to upset people and you don't want to lose an opportunity. And the house that we bought was a beautiful opportunity. You look at a property, you can get very misguided by the dream, the vision and the opportunities there. And then all of a sudden it rains and they get washed away. But the fact of the matter is, through a very separate lawyer who has seen lots of these issues and has represented clients, and this happens to people within Galicia as well as people in Spain as well as outside. It's one of those things here. You realize that the property market here is quite loose, it's very casual, and it can open you up to some of these things. But luckily there are laws there to support you if you're buying property and it turns out that that contract isn't as solid, it doesn't live up, what you've bought doesn't live up to the contract that you've been. Really difficult for us. We almost feel a little bit of a shame that we ended up being victims to this very loose and casual process, and we didn't go into it and push where we should and be as skeptical as maybe we should have been. However, what did happen is it made us realize you always play the cards that you have. And we were gifted with the opportunity of living on this farm by some people that have become friends and like family to us here. And when we step back from, the emotional part of what happened to us and relinquishing, really letting go of that vision and that dream, we realized we were really just sat on such a beautiful opportunity here and to learn. So we are spending the foreseeable future here on this farm, learning how to farm with the support of our local neighbours and friends, which is fantastic. The wonderful thing about the weather here in Galicia is that it is a mild climate, and it has rainy seasons, and there's a lot of water in Galicia because it allows us to farm 12 months of the year crops, which we have to learn to do. So, and then we have to learn how to preserve and maintain crops throughout winter so we can reuse them the following year and protect them from frost, etc. The summer season here is very hot, so it's a wonderful time for people to come and visit us if they want to get that Mediterranean climate in the summer months. We personally found out, living in Costa Blanca, that whilst the Mediterranean lifestyle and climate is fantastic, we didn't really enjoy living within that 12 months of the year. We love seasons. So one thing you will find if you come to the north of Spain is that there are seasons. They're very defined, they're very clear, they're very beautiful. Summer is long, autumn feels quite long, and winter is short. And we can already feel that when the sun comes out here, it's getting warm. It was 18 degrees the other day. Next week, I'm going to be showing you a little bit more about the farm. Really excited to do that. Obviously, we've got our new residents, the bunnies, for bunny therapy. We've got some ideas about things we could do on the farm to expand our idea around cropping. I'm obsessed about some people I follow on Instagram that really inspire me to do that. I will try and put links to them as well, but we are really in the embryonic stages of doing this, starting from scratch in this, but we're really excited about the fact that we've got the hens and possibly some more chicks if our eggs are fertilized. So stay tuned and we'll see you again soon.